This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished guest. His name is Pradeep Mehta. He's a dear friend, and he also runs an organization called CUTS. And he will tell us a little bit about what this organization stands for, what their missions and goals are. Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for coming to our show, and thank you for inviting me to speak in New Delhi. I really greatly appreciated that. Thank you very much. So tell us a little bit about your organization and what the missions and goals are, and what you're doing in terms of taking the U.S.-India relationship to the next height. So tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you, Frank. And if I may call you Frank, you could call me Pradeep.
Sure, by all means, Mr. Mehta.
Let me first of all acknowledge my gratitude to you for having the privilege of being interviewed by you. This particular program, which I watched on a few occasions, you do an excellent job. Having said that, my organization CUTS, which stands for Consumer Unity and Trust Society, was established in Jaipur in 1983 as a consumer organization. Over time, we have grown and started looking at public policy issues which impact consumer welfare. And that is how one of the reasons as to why international trade is a very important area in which we've been working since the year 1991. And in recognition of that, I have twice been advisor to the Director General of the World Trade Organization, for example. Now, why do we see trade between the US and India as an important aspect? For several reasons. US remains India's biggest market, and India is a growing economy with problems of many. Particularly, we have a big problem of creation of jobs.
Right.
Now, one way to deal with job creation is to see how export-oriented the economy is, as has been seen by many countries which have done well, including in US. Export orientation is extremely important. You saw the way China has through export orientation, and that is what I think is an important aspect of US-India relationship. Currently, our trade is $127 billion, and the two governments, the two leaders have decided that we should take the trade to $500 billion by the year 2025. And that's a very, very meaningful ambition for the benefit of both the countries and peoples of both the countries.
So,
thank you, Frank.
When I was very good, thank you very much. When I was there and I talked about taking the trade relationship between the United States and India to the $1 trillion by the year 2030, and I made the point that it's achievable. My question to you is, I think it is achievable, but we have to work hard to make sure that the India can play a crucial role in making that happen. Do you think the U.S.-India engagement, or as President Obama says, a defining moment because we have a shared interest and shared values? Are these values that binds us together? Do you think it's on the steady trajectory right now, the U.S.-India relationship?
Yes, it is. And really it is a kind of a win-win situation. We are both large democracies, and we share many values. In fact, we are heading towards our own general elections, which is probably going to be the biggest in the world. And I think probably the whole of the US is watching very closely as to what the results would be. We hope for the best. We are a chaotic democracy, but yet functioning. Now, in terms of the leadership, whether it was Democrats or Republicans, if you look at the past history, particularly after the 1919 Accord on the nuclear issues was a defining moment when India was taken out of the dock uh, uh, to be admitted as a part of the nuclear club in the world. Until then, it was a bit difficult, but that 1991 onwards, the the trajectory of a relationship has been on an upward trend. There are always going to be irritants about several issues on which we may not see each other. I mean, we are good friends. We need not be allies. And that is the important point which India has been making continuously, and that we will both gain to benefit from economic opportunities from each other. For example, I mean, India today is the biggest arms importer. Not that it's a very happy thing to say. The fact, and U.S. has a big interest in export of arms, and I mean, and so on. And so we see that it's not only the trade in terms of traditional goods and services, but defense, oil, etc., which we see would lead to much higher volumes between the two countries. And as a consequence of that, the relationship could also lead to leveraging markets outside in third countries, where
Very well said.
India can do things at a lower cost than what US does. And if US companies operating in India are exporting to third countries, it's still a gain for the US taxpayer.
I want to talk to you about the fact that you have a passion and commitment, and you have been a voice for the developing countries and consumer welfare. So can you tell us why is it important? Why did you take up those issues? I just want to shift the gear a little bit.
No, very good, Frank. I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, that is the basis of the work that we do. And in the conversation so far, this issue was not flagged away. It should have been, and I'm glad you raised it. In the developing world, people suffer from poverty. And not only
Yes,
poverty, but more importantly, inequality, which is what does not help human advancement or human welfare. So when we began 36 years ago, we felt that it is important for us to look at how we can expand the consumers in this world, particularly the developing world, people who have the purchasing power, and not just who are dependent upon dole, but now in order to do that, you need to empower them. You need to enable them, and that is why we now have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030 as a framework for the whole world to work upon, which includes trade as one opportunity, includes infrastructure, it includes consumption, it includes production, with the motto "Leave no one behind." And we are very committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And in doing whatever we are doing, we hope to progress the advancement of the SDGs in the developing world. Mind you, Frank, I mean, we are operating physically in the developing world. We have 3 centers in Africa, one in Hanoi, other than a center in Geneva, and we're just about to complete 1 year of our Washington, D.C. center, which is a
yes,
virtual
yes.
office. It's a virtual office, but it is still very active. We've been producing, doing events, etc., including, as you very kindly recall, the public engagement that we did with you in Delhi in order
Right.
to advance the agenda on trade relationship. Now, let me reiterate
I
what
want
I
to,
said in terms of public welfare or welfare of the poor in the world, which is, as I said, continues to remain a challenge for the whole international community. And that is
I
something
want to
which we
talk
need to,
I
sorry.
want to talk a little bit about the unemployment situation in India. And especially for the younger people, unemployment, the economy is sort of stagnant right now. Things are not going very well. Obviously, the trade will help because you talked about the export. Export will help to create a job, and also the Prime Minister Modi's what he talked about making India in terms of manufacturing and the digital cities those are the important aspects. But how do you inject and instill in the younger generation the entrepreneurship, innovation, so they can go out and create their own jobs? The public sector has, the private sector has to play a very important role. Can you shed some light on that?
I'm glad you raised an issue which is very close to my heart. We have been speaking about creating job creators. Even if you own a cycle repair shop, you will give employment to at least another 2 or 3, 4 more people. So the idea is not only look for employment as a job, but also to look as to how you can be an entrepreneur in order to move forward the economy and take others along with you, inspire others to do the same. Secondly, the government of India has, fortunately, under Modi's leadership, has come out with many schemes in order to promote entrepreneurship as well as jobs. Thirdly, we are engaged in currently a very milestone project, Frank, to look at the labor-intensive sectors down the supply chain as to where we can help to create better and good jobs. This is being supported by the Ford Foundation of the US, with whom we have had a partnership since the beginning of cuts. And we hope that in this milestone project, we will be able to identify sectors. And for example, we've just taken up the textile sector, which is fascinating.
Yes,
starting from the I'm going beyond the farm gate, from ginning onwards to right up to the garment that you're wearing, the shirt that you're wearing, and so on, as to where is it that jobs are being created. Now, this with backward linkages as well. So upstream and downstream impacts, good and better jobs. And the idea is to address inequality as well, and not to leave inequality. And that you're not looking at jobs for the sake of jobs, but jobs which are satisfying jobs.
Very well said. But do you see the economic opportunities and investment opportunity after the election is over? Do you see a brighter horizon? And you see the U.S. company investing in India to create jobs also? And what India can do to make it more attractive for the foreigners to invest?
As it stands today, the US is the biggest investor in India because they see the opportunities are very clear. We have rule of law. Not only that, the government has worked very hard to ensure that the ease of doing business becomes better and better every year. And not only that, we are a large federal country like the US is. There is also a competition among our states, as in the US, to be better in terms of attracting business and ensuring that they are able to do things at a lower cost and at a faster speed. We expect that this cycle will continue. We do not see that this cycle will fall because of the fact, as we said, we have a very large youth, which is underemployed. I wouldn't say that there is a large unemployment in our country. There is a large underemployment in our country.
Very well said.
Absolutely right. Otherwise, Frank, we would have seen people marching on the streets. That look, we are without a job, we are without food, and so on. We unfortunately do not have that situation as bad in large areas of our country. But the idea is that how can we ensure that we can create more opportunities? And as I said, how can we create more job creators? I think that is the biggest challenge, which the government is well seized of and is working very hard in order to ensure that there is a bit of I won't say unemployment as such, but there is a downward trend in terms of employment. But yet that is not causing misery.
But India also have to make it easier to do the business, and I think Prime Minister Modi has done a good job in that direction, but it's not quite there. And also make it attractive for the foreigners to make the investment. And also there are certain situations in India that does not reflect the values of India, which is the it's a little bit hatred and bigotry and some things that's going on. That is, and you mentioned that this does not reflect the values, the character, and conscience of a nation that has been a beacon of hope for democracy and secularism around the globe.
Frank, the problem in our country is there's too much of corruption. In spite of the fact that Narendra Modi, there's too much of corruption, too much of discretion. Too many rules and laws and practices are practiced in an irrational manner. And there is a mindset problem also. Our bureaucrats refuse to change.
Very well said.
As much as Narendra Modi is making effort, I mean, he said it in Hindi, as he said, "Na main khaunga na khane dunga main." And he has proven that fact, that look, he's trying to attack corruption, and he's attacking, for example, through the EODB, by enabling a competition among states, who can do better. And ease of doing business still remains a very big problem. What EODB, the World Bank ranking, is sort of getting approvals, which is not sufficient, because a lot of people still have to pay a regular hafta. And particularly the poor self-entrepreneur on the street cannot exist without paying a hafta to the police or the municipal authority, even if he is selling bananas on the street.
That's a very sad situation.
It is, but it's a situation which we are struggling with, and we hope that things might change as we move along. But it may take a few generations before. The answer is, and it's a very simple answer, is that only development could be the cure for this. Yeah. Not that all developed countries are free of corruption. Even in the US, the corruption is, existing. It may not happen in the same manner as it happens in India, but yet corruption, the elections, for example, the political elections today cost a huge amount of money, whether it's in India or in US. And that can only come through corruption. In US, fortunately, much more transparency than in India.
I want to shift the gear and talk to you the remaining time that we have, Mr. Mehta, about the data privacy. I mean, you have been a campaigner. How can consumer globally remain protected in the digital area? That's the first question. The second question, before I close the conversation, about the WTA. How do the United States and India work at the World Trade Organization to talk about the disputes that they have? And also the third point is the tariff, tariff that this administration has put on Indian goods, but not giving them favorable deal. That's also hurting the India's economy a little bit as well. And I wrote a column on this in Hindustan.
No, I know. I read that, and I've in fact quoted that in our today's. We are producing a monthly bulletin, Frank, and you're there in the cover. Quoting on that.
Please send me a link.
No, you are in a mailing list.
Okay. Yes.
Anyway, let me answer your question. First of all, the digital economy is a complex economy. As it evolves, it is evolving much faster than we could even ever imagine. AI, robots, IoT, etc., etc. Now, we are looking at as to how the tech giants are able to respond to people's aspirations and demands and don't make them as their what's it called, guinea pigs in this particular thing. Now, on AI itself, there are ethical involved. So how do we deal with that? I mean, so it's a very fast evolving area which we are hoping to address in various ways. Secondly, in terms of the tariffs between US and India, India as a developing country maintains high level of tariffs in several areas which Trump doesn't like. It's unfortunate that we have to protect our own people, particularly their livelihoods or jobs. And if you open up the market too swiftly, then you might find that many people will get out of this. If you look at Africa, where, as I said, we've been working, there has been deindustrialization. They have to come down on their tariffs very fast. and they have not been able to catch up. So you can well imagine the. Now, between US and India, fortunately, intellectually, we are competent to deal with the US. We are not a small petty power that will that will succumb to the US. There's a constant discussion, a constant debate. And that is what our center aims to do, along with many other similar bodies. Other than the government, they've got a Joint Trade Commission, which will continue to deal with many of these issues. And some trade irritants will continue to remain. They could be, as I said, our latest monthly brief of our US center is talking about these particular issues, which we think are important for us to understand in the larger context of the economic and strategic relationship that India and US has. That what we are pleading is, what even Government of India has pleaded is, don't take an isolated view on trade. Look at it in the larger package of things.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mehta, for coming to our show, and we want to thank you for
you're embarrassing me.
Yeah, thank you for your leadership, what you're doing to make a difference. You are a difference maker, and people like you inspire all of us to do well, but do good. So this is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.